Hello everyone, this is JC Sorrell bringing you a review of 1980X for the Nintendo Dads. We appreciate the publisher and developer for giving us a review copy of this game. 1980X is a throwback to arcade games of the past, and it's layered in with a story about a boy who is seeking to find his place in the world amidst some domestic problems. I think that this game has hints of greatness, but ultimately it doesn't quite stick the landing. It starts with a series of games, the first one being a game called Beating Heart. This is a classic beat-em-up brawler in the style of Streets of Rage, and I was a big fan of these games, so I was so excited to start the game this way. And it's pretty generic in the way it works. You pick up items, you punch people, you kick people, and it's not quite as deep as you might expect for a normal fighter. I think that it's kind of a high-level overview of what a fighting game can be like. And that's kind of the story of this whole game of 1980X. Every one of the sub-mini games are hints of what a game could be like from the arcades, but don't have quite the depth that they ought to have. Having said that, they're immensely fun. This was a button-mashing, fight-em-up, beat-em-up, and I just loved it. What the game does try to do is layer in a bit of story on top of your average arcade game. So as it pans out of each game, you'll have a bit of story, and it'll talk to you about what the kid is going through in his life. So you'll see this fighting game just sort of ends, and you don't get to finish it because it's going to talk to you now about how this kid is lonely, and he's stuck in suburbia, and he wants to go somewhere else in his life.
Just like every other night. Counting taillights on the highway. Soon the cars
and that's all great, but sometimes he can get a little bit melodramatic. For the first few games, I thought that this story was really going to build into something that was amazing. But it turns out the kid's just kind of a downer the whole time. And so I was disappointed that it didn't develop into a more fulsome story. I will say that the graphics in all of the cutscenes are amazing. You'll see a scene here as he walks through his town trying to find meaning, and I think it just looks so good. It reminds me of games that I always wanted to play as a kid, like Flashback, but I never actually had access to. Now, as an adult that I can get them, I have tried them, and I find that I actually just don't like them. But the suggestion of these games being great comes back to me in a very nostalgic way, and I loved that.
He'd be looking for classics.
And at last he finds the arcade, where he finds a great deal of meaning for himself, and he finds all these people he can fit in with, and he finds one of the best games of the whole thing, Into the Void, which is a space shooter just like R-Type. And oh man, this was so fun. I was mashing buttons faster than my thumbs could handle it. My wife walked by and was trying to make fun of me for getting so into the game, but I couldn't even see her because I was trying to beat this big robot bad guy. In this game, you get your normal weapon power-ups from beating certain gold-colored enemies, and they give you a special item so your lasers can get better or you'll get points. And it's just so satisfying. In fact, at this point in the game, I was reminded of the old Nintendo show on Nickelodeon called Nick Arcade. And, you know, these kids would compete and try to get as many points as you could, and I kind of want to get as many points as I could in this game. It was so much fun. And sometimes it seems impossible. There's just wave after wave of enemies, and I died a lot. But you get infinite lives. The next game is The Runaway, which is a driving game like Outrun. And I wanted to like this game really badly, but it never developed into much of anything other than a narrative transition. This game, there was nothing to it. There was no challenge. I just drove. And towards the end of it, they just use it as a narrative device. So this section here, he's just talking to you about how he's trying to escape from his life. And that's good. And I liked where that was going, but I just wish this game had a little bit more excitement, like Into the Void had.
A road to somewhere.
The next game, though, however, is amazing. It's called Shadow Play, and it's like a forced scroller shinobi, and it's hard. Really hard. I died a ton in this game, but I couldn't put it down. I was midnight, and I was just trying to lay in bed and beat this game. My thumbs locked up, and I couldn't do it. And I got game over after game over after game over. But this game is almost worth the price of admission alone right here. I'll show you some footage of the game now because it's just so good. The game concludes with a role-playing game in which you have to make it through a maze, and you have a select couple of options where you can fight in different manners, and each enemy has a different weakness. And as you look on the sidebar to the left, there's a lot of very negative messaging that this kid's dealing with, presumably from his mom. And so I thought that was really an interesting way to show this kid's mental state. And I liked this game. This last game was a lot of fun. But it ends, and then there's no resolution to the game. And I was disappointed that there was nothing more than a to be continued at the end, suggesting that there's another game coming out. But it felt so unresolved. It felt like one of those situations where they'll take a set of 3 books and then try to turn them into 4 movies, making that third movie of the series just kind of end on a whimper. That's how this game kind of wrapped up. I really wanted something more satisfying to wrap it up, unless that's just the message of the game, that sometimes in life there is no resolution. I don't know if that's what they were trying to go for, if they were trying to be that deep, but I just was left unsatisfied by the end of it. On the whole, though, 1980X is a really fun collection of arcade games. To me, they don't really look like 1980s arcade games. They were more like early 90s games, but maybe 1990X wasn't as satisfying of a title for them to use. But I would recommend buying this game. It definitely has some great atmospherics going on. It does wear out its welcome in the narrative piece. But some of those games, like Into the Void and Shadowrun, are just fantastic. And maybe the developer and publisher will decide next time to just focus on those 2 games and build a full-on R-type sequel, and that would be worth it, and so would the Shadowrun game. Really great experiences. So I would recommend this game, but with a caveat that you might be let down by the end. Thank you for watching this Nintendo Dad's review of 1980X. We hope you'll tune in to our podcast, which streams live on Twitch and YouTube Thursday nights. You can also catch old episodes on your favorite podcast player like iTunes, Stitcher, or CastBox. Thanks so much.